Hello friends, we're going to look at relative clauses today, and hopefully at the end of this little presentation you will have a better idea about them and you can use them to combine sentences. I have got one practice for you and some web links that you can study for furthermore. So let's look at defining relative clauses first. And what is a relative clause? A relative clause gives an information about a noun, but unlike Turkish, it comes after the noun. And if it's a defining relative clause, we don't use commas. And we use relative clauses in defining relative clauses to differentiate a person or a place or a thing from the others. So let's look at some examples. That girl is the actress who won the Oscar. So here the actress is the noun, and just after the noun, who won the Oscar part is defining the actress. It's giving information about a noun, and it comes just after the noun. So we have an alternative here. Instead of who or which relative pronouns, you can also use that's for people or things. As you see in the example, I just saw an old friend that I used to see every day. Here, instead of that, you can use who. And also we can omit the relative pronoun when it's the object of the relative clause. So what does it mean? Let's see it in an example. So here, I just saw an old friend who I used to see every day, you can say, or you can omit or take off this who part. I just saw an old friend I used to see every day. So let's see what kind of relative pronouns we can use to define what kind of things. So for people we use who or that. For things we use which or that. For possessions, which means something we own, we have, we use whose. For time we use when, and for places we use where. Let's some more example sentences for you to see. So here I gave you two sentences, and then I'm going to show you how we can combine these two sentences using a relative clause. And I highlighted the same words here, the time, and in the second sentence, then refers to the time in the first sentence. So let's see, I remember the time when you were just a little kid. So here we are defining the time, and right after that we use a relative clause. So here are some more examples for you to see how these two sentences have been combined using different types of relative pronouns. So the second part is non-defining relative clauses. What does it mean? So it means here with non-defining we give additional or non-essential information. So that's why we need to use a comma. So here we have an example. That is Sam who is going to move into my apartment. Here normally we can just say that is Sam and period. But here I'm giving some additional extra information. So that's why it's called non-defining. So there are some rules about non-defining relative clauses. For example, here we can't use who or which. Here we cannot use that instead of who or which. Because I told you in defining clauses we can do it, but if you use commas, we can't do that. So here we have to use which or who, but not that. And another rule is we cannot omit the relative pronoun. Here you see Sam, who I'm going to see later, is my boyfriend. So here again, because of the commas, you have to use who. You can't take it off. And lastly, we can use which to refer to the whole sentence, like it's here in the example. The plane was delayed, which meant we were late. Here, which defines, talks about the whole sentences here. The plane was delayed part. And another important part is prepositions in relative clauses. So this is all about verbs taking prepositions, such as wait for, talk about, look after, work in. So here we have different places where we can use these prepositions. In everyday speech or informal spoken or written English, these prepositions come at the end of the relative clause, like in the example. This is the friend who I told you about. Normally, you can think of this as two sentences. This is the friend. I told you about that friend. When we turned it into a relative clauses, we have to remember to put the preposition here. In formal or written English, this preposition comes, as you see, just before the relative pronoun. He is someone with whom I can work. And there is another thing here. Instead of this where relative pronoun, you can use which, in, or in which. So as you see here, we have three alternatives. So here I have a practice for you. I gave you two sentences and I want you to make one sentence using relative clauses. And please remember to use commas if necessary. And answer key, you can check it later. And if you want to study further, I gave you some useful website links. And here where you can find all this information in our books and my English lab. Thank you for listening to me and have a great day.